Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I'm here today to do a Friday Reads video where I talk about the week in reading that I have had and usually any bookish things that have gone on during the week. I'm going to skip that this week, and that means there will be no timestamp in the description box down below to jump to the Friday Reads. It's all going to be Friday Reads. That's in part because I did an hour-long video book haul. I had so many books to talk about that it ended up being like an hour. So I figure you could use a short video from me and I could use a short video as well. So there's that, but there's also the fact that the election is coming on Tuesday as I'm filming this. So there's a lot going on. Everybody's really stressed. We don't really need to talk about it, but I will say, if you have the option of early voting, I hope you have taken it. And if you have the option of early voting but have not done so yet, I hope you do it. If you do not have the option of early voting, I hope you have a plan to vote on on election day. Do not sit this election out. So much is on the line. It's very important. You just need to turn out, and hopefully good things will happen. We will see, and that's all we really need to say about that. Home stretch. I know we're all pretty anxious, but hopefully good things will be happening next week. We'll see. And then the final note is that I am wearing a Freddy Krueger sweater for Halloween because I am filming this on Halloween, and that's kind of fun. I need to try to film this kind of quickly because we don't usually get a lot of trick-or-treaters, but we usually get a handful. So just in case they start showing up, I want to be ready. Joel is out in the rest of the house wearing his Jason jersey. So I have Freddy, he has Jason, and we decided not to make Teddy wear a costume. We have some of Guinness's old costumes that would probably fit him, but we decided to give him a little bit of a break. And it's really cold today where I live, so wearing a sweater is actually feeling pretty good right now. But so I have my Freddy Krueger costume on, and let's just talk about books and do Friday Reads. I finished 2 books this week. The first one I finished was Fall for Him by Andy Burke. I and many other people who comment on my videos have been leaning into cinnamon bun books or just kind of distractions from the world, because the world is a very, very anxiety-producing place right now. And I'm glad I'm not alone in feeling that. So this is a male-for-male cinnamon bun style romance, and it was very cute. It hit all of the elements that I really needed it to do. I will say the plot is a little overly complicated. That would be my only critique, but it's still a fun book. There was still some pretty good chemistry between the characters. It is a spicy book, if the spice level is of concern to you. The premise is you have Derek and Dylan, and that is actually one thing as well that was a little more complicated. They both have D names, so for whatever reason, sometimes I frequently got them confused. So they would be talking about Derek, and I'd have to wait, which one's Derek? And, you know, I just read the pairing last week, and the fact that the names are Theo and Kit, I don't know why. It just helped me keep them apart and distinguish them a little bit better. And in this one, it seemed a little more difficult. So you have Derek and Dylan, who are staying in apartments, one on top of the other in a building. They didn't purchase these apartments. They have both been residing in them for, again, there's a lot of complicated backstory in this book, and we don't need to really get into it. But the important thing is Dylan, I believe, is the one in the upper apartment, and he is trying to renovate it for his uncle. It had fallen into disrepair. He falls through the floor into Derek's apartment, and there is problems with the landlord, the HOA, because of the renovations that are happening, and also because Derek has been taking care of a dog, again, because of complicated backstory reasons. And because they both need to keep this information from the HOA, they decide to collaborate and basically be roommates while the situation is fixed, and then work together to sort of hide the fact that they have a dog, which is not allowed in the apartment complex. And then they get to know each other. And like I said, it's really cute. There is a little bit too much backstory. Like, there are situations with Dylan's family that are very complicated. There are situations with Derek's family that are very complicated. And there's also backstory where Derek didn't like Dylan when he first started seeing them around the apartment building. And that's because of a sort of miscommunication that happened where Dylan went on a date with Derek's best friend / crush, unrequited crush, who is now dead. And it just feels like it requires so much to be explained and worked through and adds layers of things that the characters have to go through in the book that could have been simplified a little bit. However, it was a pretty cute cinnamon bun book. And as I said, it really hit all of those vibes. I would just say I would have preferred it to be a little simplified because it just felt like you had to jump through a lot of hoops that didn't necessarily need to be there. But it was cute. So it did everything I needed it to do. Now, I had been making really good progress on Salamlik by Khaled Al-Ismail, translated by Larry Price. But then I did something that was a bit of a mistake, like just a tiny little mistake. It actually, I'm saying it's a mistake, but it's a good book. I started reading Mississippi Sissy by Kevin Sessoms on audio. This is a book that I had owned for a very long time. I believe I purchased this when it first came out in paperback, and it's copyright 2007. So I've had this book for a very long time and have not gotten around to reading it. But I have always wanted to read it, so even though I have moved several times since I got this book, even though I have unhauled a lot of books from my library over the years since I got it, it has always stayed here, and I have always intended to get around to reading it. What made me finally say this is the time to do it? Well, Gwen Walls, Tim Walls' wife. I saw a video when people were originally getting to know the Walls family after Tim Walls was announced as Kamala Harris's VP pick. And of course, there were a lot of videos that made the rounds. One of them was something he had posted during the pandemic when Minnesota was in lockdown, and he and his family decided to do like a sort of book club check-in where they each spoke about a book that they were currently reading. And Gwen Walls had read Mississippi Sissy. And that is the thing that made me say, you know what? I really need to prioritize this book. So it took about a month or maybe 2 months, but I finally got around to it. I listened to it on audio. The audio is read by Kevin Sessoms, and he really commits to the performance of it. When people are angry, he growls and yells. When he does accents, some maybe a little more problematic than others because some of those characters are like people of color, and but he is speaking in the vernacular of them. So, it's something he clearly understands, but he does a really good job with the audio, with maybe a couple of tiny little quibbles here and there. This is his memoir about growing up gay in Mississippi, as you may gather from the title. This book has a lot of trigger warnings. There is sexual abuse and sexual assault, and there are hate crimes, there is racism, there are a lot of things that get covered in this book. And the reason I say this was a mistake is that this, in combination with Salamlik, started to feel like a lot. They hit a lot of the same beats of growing up in a society that creates shame around homosexuality and the violence that can come with that shame. So 2 books hitting those same beats at the same time ended up being a lot. And I decided, because the audio of Mississippi Sissy is pretty short, I decided to prioritize it and just sort of temporarily put Salamlik to the side. I haven't read it in 2 days. And in that 2 days, I finished Mississippi Sissy. So now that I'm done with this, I'm going to go back to Salamlik. So when I say that there was a mistake, the mistake was piling on sort of gay trauma stories and needing a bit of a break. So I could only do one at a time. And I finished Mississippi Sissy. This is a very good book. It really reckons with growing up in Mississippi in the 1950s and 1960s, and what a complicated place it was at the time, and growing up with people who casually had racist ideas and ideology and would talk about those things, and growing up gay in a society that really frowned on gay people. And the thing about Kevin Sessoms is that he was more willful than a lot of people would be. A lot of people would meet the sort of resistance and shame-based criticism that he did as a young child, and they would sort of wither and pull into themselves and try to act differently. he sort of entrenched himself in the face of that criticism and started to say, this is who I am. This is who I want to be. If I want to make everyone around me call me Arlene Francis, you better call me Arlene Francis, because that's the game we're playing right now. And he insisted on dressing up as a witch for Halloween one year. Very timely. And a lot of the things he ends up going through because of his stubborn willfulness are difficult. And but at the same time, he doesn't have some of the in-held hate, self-loathing that a lot of gay men who grew up under similar circumstances would have. But it still exists. And it also really explores the ideas of racism, because he has a beloved woman who works in his household when he's a child, and eventually she leaves, and he sees her in town one day and he asks her about why she left. And her response to this is very thought-provoking. It's a pivotal moment in his life, because he realized that his own casual race, like assuming that words like the N-word were just things that he could use and it wouldn't really matter, did matter and did harm to other people. So it reckons with that a great deal as well. The only critique that I would have of this is that I felt like I wanted a little more context. This is a great memoir of his childhood. It tells the story, but it doesn't really give you context from his later life. It doesn't reflect on all of these things that happened to him. And I felt like I wanted that, particularly at the end. I wanted Kevin Sessoms to give us a little bit more context about where his life went after the events that we cover in the book, how he feels about these things now. Things like that. Just reflect on everything that we experience here. It is bookended with the murder of Frank Haines. So actually, I had started this book about a month ago on audio, and immediately there was a dead body as a result of a hate crime. And I thought, whoa, no, not going to happen right now. But I decided to do it now. And that sort of bookends the book. You open with him discovering the body of this sort of friend and mentor figure of his, and then you flash back to his own childhood, and you sort of work your way back up to when he is 19 and in college, and falls into the orbit of Frank Haines, who was a writer and journalist who fraternized with a lot of elite literary women in the era, including Eudora Welty, who is a member of the Pulitzer family of authors for the book The Optimist's Daughter, and just a famous writer in her own right for short stories that she wrote, and Delta Wedding. I'm really looking forward to getting to her as part of my Pulitzer Prize project. And she factors in, like, he has dinners with her and drinks with her. And there's even an interesting story that resonated very powerfully with me as someone who lives in a red state, like a gay man who lives in a red state, because someone brings up what had been framed to Eudora Welty as a sort of gotcha question, like, well, if you dislike all of these things about Mississippi, why don't you leave? And she specifically talking about the civil rights movement and resistance to it. And her response was essentially, with all that's going on, why would I want to be anywhere else? The idea that you need to be where the struggle is in some ways. And even reckoning with the idea that being able to say something like that is in itself a form of privilege. Not everyone can choose to remain in a location and expect not to have blowback on them or some form of comeuppance. So it works on like multiple levels. Like, this is actually a very intelligent book. I do just wish that it wrapped things up a little bit, had some reflections based on Kevin Sessoms' later life. Like, there's no indication of anything that happens after this time period when he is 19 and eventually moves to New York. And I kind of wanted more of that. And I don't know if that means that Kevin Sessoms should write a follow-up to this, but it's been a long time and he hasn't. So I just wish that it was here in the text of the book. But I'm glad I finally got around to reading it. It is a great book, and one that I would definitely recommend to you. Again, check out the trigger warnings, like the full list of them. I'll just mention again, there's racism, sexual assault, abuse, and just a lot. So definitely check those out, because if they are something that could be difficult for you, maybe this is not a book that you should engage with at the moment. But if you can, when you can, it would be great. And I'm glad I finally got around to reading it. So, as I said, I had been reading Salamlik by Khaled Al-Ismail, translated by Larry Price. I'm going to kind of hold this low again because basically, as I keep saying, I said this in my book haul, I said this in my last Friday Reads, there isn't actual nudity, like a towel comes in before it gets to that point, but the towel is very low on the man's body. And I do feel like that could make some people uncomfortable. So I'm just going to leave this, and the rest can be up to your imagination. This is a wonderful, wonderful book so far. It does hit similar beats to Mississippi Sissy in that it deals with what it is like to grow up as a gay man in a society that wants to shame you for the way you love and who you are, and the difficulties of that. It also really dives into what it is to be a refugee, and in very interesting ways. And my long book haul video will be linked down below, but this is the second book that I cover in that. So if you don't want to sit for an hour, you can watch the first two books, and I will talk about this and what it's about in greater detail than I will offer here. I want to get a little further along because I only made it 83 pages in before the sort of stress that I was having with Mississippi Sissy made me decide to table one of them for now, and I decided that Salamlik would be the one that I tabled. But also, if you want to just make yourself a cup of coffee or a tea, go ahead and watch the whole hour of my book haul. This is just such a great book. I'm so glad that I'm right. It's really well written. It's beautiful. It is about growing up, discovering who you are, trying to be comfortable with who you are, trying to find acceptance, and then adding that layer of his life as a refugee on top of that is very powerful. This is a very powerful book in the first 83 pages. And it's not that long of a book. It is 229 pages. So I'm really looking forward to finishing this. And I'll talk more about it in my next Friday Reads video because of that. Now, I have already decided what my next books are going to be. So before I sign off on this rare, short Friday Reads video, I will tell you what my next reads are going to be. First up, audio. Part of why I also decided to dive into Mississippi Sissy is because the audio is short. And the reason I was looking for a short audiobook is that Joel started listening to the audio of Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. Now, if you have followed along at all, you know that Joel and I both read Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez in, I think, July. And we loved it. And then we found out that it was the third in a series. So we went back and read Part of Your World about a month ago, which was the first book in the series. And that was also delightful. So Yours Truly is the second installment. And I am not someone who usually likes to do series books back to back to back. That's why it was a rarity that last week I did both the Kamigawa Food Detectives and the Restaurant of Lost Recipes in a single week. That is not my usual MO. I usually like to space things out a little bit better. So that's kind of what I'm doing with Abby Jimenez. But I think, especially with the election, this is a good time for me to retreat to Abby Jimenez land and the Part of Your World universe. So I haven't started it yet. I downloaded the audio this morning and got it ready to go. So this is going to be my next audiobook, and I should be done with it by the next time we speak. When also, hopefully the next time we speak in a Friday Reads video, hopefully there will be good news politically. We shall see. We shall see. But I think this is the perfect book to help with bridging that stress gap over the next few days. And plus, Joel really enjoyed it. So that has me very excited to dive in. And then, as I said, I am this weekend going to be diving back into Salamlik. And once I finish that, I have decided what my next book is going to be. And I don't always like to talk about what my next book is going to be because I'm a mood reader. And I fear committing to what my next book is going to be, because I still have over 100 pages left in Salamlik. There's a chance I will be in a different mood or headspace by the time I'm finished with that book and might want to change my mind about what my next book is going to be. But I'm going to commit myself to The Snow Child by Éowyn Ivey. Now, I talk about this a great deal in my book haul because I got this copy of the book in October. So again, if you want to watch that long hour-long video, grab a cup of coffee, make yourself a cup of tea, whatever you like, and get cozy and watch it. I talk about this in great detail. Otherwise, you can just go through the list of books. They are listed in the description box in order on that video, so you can sort of get a sense of where The Snow Child will fall in. It is in the first half of the video. I do know that. But yeah, basically the short version of it is, this is something that had been on my radar for a while, and I resisted the idea of reading it because it is sort of inspired by fairy tale myth, and that is not something I typically engage with. And I started hearing great things about the book that Éowyn Ivey has coming out next year and just how good it is. And that really got me reconsidering Snow Child, and I looked into it a little more further, and it sounded very interesting. And people started telling me that they loved it. So I got myself a copy. I talked about it in the end of the year book tag that I did, which will also be linked down below. And the feedback I've gotten on it has been overwhelmingly positive. And a lot of people have said, you shouldn't think of this as a fantasy book or a fairy tale book, because Éowyn Ivey really grounds the writing in a sense of realism. And it's, if you're looking for like fairy tale or fantasy, that's not what you're going to find. So that actually intrigues me even more. So I feel like I'm going to commit to this. And Jackie McMenamin, who is a subscriber, suggested a group read of The Snow Child. Now, I am not someone who wants to do formal group reads, like with discussion points and leading a discussion. But what I will say is, I think that is a fun idea. If you want to join in. I am going to finish Salamlik. And what I will do is, when I finish Salamlik, I will make a community post on the community tab on my page. And I will also post on Instagram in a story, probably, when I have finished this book. And if you would like to read The Snow Child at the same time, go forth. And then we can chat about it. Maybe I don't want to do formal check-ins or anything like that. Again, I feel like I'm kind of at capacity for stress and organizational management at the moment. But if you would like to read it at the same time, we can then talk about it when I have Friday Reads videos. And I think that'll be a fun way of doing this. So again, once I finish Salamlik, I will make a post on the community tab on my page, and I will also post something in stories on Instagram. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, there will be a link in the description box down below. It's there every week. Also, you could just look up Supposedly Fun, because that's my username on Instagram. Isn't that handy? And then if you want to join in and read The Snow Child with us, you may do so. That'll be a fun and different thing for me to do. I have really resisted the idea of, I haven't done buddy reads this year either, really, because I have embraced the sort of no pressure rule. So the idea of a group read feels a little stressful, but I think that would be a low pressure way of doing it. I will let you know when I have finished Salamlik and I'm ready to dive in. And then if you want to join, you can join, and then we can have conversations in the comment section on my Friday Reads videos about it. And that'll be fun. And if I haven't finished it by my next Friday Reads, you can post like discussion ideas, and then we could talk about it. We'll see where it goes. Again, not applying a lot of pressure, but that is going to be my next book. I'm going to commit to it because we're committing to this group read idea. And thank you to Jacqueline McMenamin for suggesting that. That is where we are. That is Friday Reads. And let's leave it at that. We already in the middle of this video got a trick-or-treater, so I should stop just in case. We usually don't get many trick-or-treaters. We usually get about 5 to 10, depending. But I should be available with my Freddy Krueger sweater just in case anybody comes by. So I would love to hear how your Halloween went, what your plans for November are, because Joel and I are going to have to film our October wrap up very soon. So stay tuned for that as well next week. And good thoughts for the election. Vote, 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 vote. Please, 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 please vote. It's so important. So I'll leave you with that. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading, and get out and vote.